Morning.
Julie has joined.
Good morning. Good morning. All right, it's 9 o'clock. Say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Just wanted you to sit down.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go right through.
I didn't this time. I read that morning.
Martha, I saw a hit at the light.
I did it right this time, guys. I'm proud of myself.
Well, I didn't know you were gonna do that, so I just did it the old way, just to kind of go along. Copy. Or not the old way even, the improper way.
Consider for approval minutes and agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes and agenda as presented.
I'll second it.
Motion by Derby, seconded by Jonesville to approve the minutes and agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Consider for approval recorder's quarterly report.
Here you go.
Morning, Chris.
Good morning. Pretty good quarter, considering that's usually our slowest quarter, but we're into boat renewal season right now, so those are due April 30th. And it looks like we took in 122,000 the first quarter, so or this third quarter. But only 31,000 goes to the county.
What do you get for fees on the boat licenses?
They vary depending on the size of the boat.
Okay,
My office only wants $1.25.
that's what I was wondering. Pretty much the same process.
Yeah.
I never realized that they actually categorize the size of boats.
Yeah.
I would have thought that it would be a boat.
Oh, the bigger it is, the more it costs.
Sure.
And jet skis are the most.
Oh,
for
is
some
that right?
reason. We don't have a lot of them anymore, though.
Oh, they're more than boats. Interesting.
Jet skis are still a pretty popular thing though, aren't they?
I don't think as much as,
Evidently it's kind of,
Maybe not around here anyway.
yeah, not around here, maybe in bigger water areas, but I'm surprised how many boats this county does have, because there's really not a lot of lake property around here.
there's a lot of guys who,
They have cabins.
Yeah,
yeah. My neighbor has an ice house that looks like a camper.
yeah. I guess there's a lot of that, a lot of ice fishing. Probably see that at Rice Lake.
Well, and then you have the extra sticker for the, for being on the water, for the rangers and stuff like that, right? I mean, you.
Well, yeah, you have to have it registered if you use it on the ice.
Yeah. And is there a fee for that? I can't remember.
Yeah, it's the regular registration fee,
Regular.
$17.75.
You have to have a
They used to have just a farm use only tag, which they did away with a few years
Oh,
ago.
they did.
Yeah.
They
So
still
now,
have farm use only for snowmobile?
No.
They got rid of that too.
I mean, you can, what it is you can use it on your farm, you just don't have to register it.
You have to have a special thing in order to run a four-wheeler on the ice. Is that
Yeah.
what you said?
They just
Well,
registered.
it's just a
Or
registration.
just a regular registration. Oh, all right.
And a lot more people are riding them. I see there's a bill, I don't know where that's going, but to have a statewide, like we have our county ordinance, they want to do a statewide ordinance.
Oh,
And it would be, it'd be you have to opt out instead of opting in.
I think so.
oh.
I don't know if it's gone anywhere.
Yeah,
I think
I
it's kind of sitting there.
Well, the
a way it'd be nice, but I guess it kind of takes away the county's control.
Well, the challenge is on the state roads. Right now, you're not allowed on a state road unless you're a farmer.
People forget that too.
I'll bet.
There's a lot of things going on that are trying to take control away from counties.
And the thing is, I don't think people realize that you cannot drive a four-wheeler or ATV more than 35 miles an hour.
No. I was gonna talk a little bit about, there's a, bill in the House too about blockchain technology and how it affects recording. It's kind of a new, it says Iowa has now legalized blockchain transactions. But they're wondering if someone sells property in Iowa using blockchain technology, what gets recorded in the public land registry and how? And right now, you can use blockchain to buy and sell property, but you still have to file for recording a document that complies with our provisions, which is good.
What does blockchain?
Yeah, so.
I think it's a form of payment,
Exchanging money.
exchange money, it's all done through the internet.
Kind of like crypto or.
Yeah.
Mm.
So it's kind of concerning a little bit, just so we keep this law in effect that you still have to record it, because that could cause,
Well, I'm worried that there'd be another way to steal people's property.
yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it sounds like an awful easy
It's
way.
bad enough the way it is. You have to protect your title to your house.
Right.
I
And you know,
like the
and
paper
that,
thing.
we're lucky we live in a small community, but that happens in big cities. People forge deeds and,
Oh.
yeah, crypto. Look it up.
So is this pending, or what's the time frame?
No, they did go through, but they still have this provision in here that you do have to comply with provisions of recording in chapter 558 Iowa Code. So,
I don't know why you wouldn't have.
no,
Wow. Hopefully they read the bill.
right. You know what they're doing. But yeah, we still, every month, still send all recorded documents to Zillow, First American. Now we have a new one, Record Information Services. They want all of our recordings.
And has that always been that you have to send
Well,
them that?
we've been doing it for about 3-4 years to Zillow. Now these other two have jumped on just in the last year.
I suppose they use it to compare values.
Probably.
But that's required of you to do that, or you?
Well, it's public information. So
Then are you?
We
they
get-
paying you?
Yeah, we get $200 from each company
Okay, that's what I was
For a year.
wondering.
per month,
Okay,
which is kind of nice for the
yeah, then I'm like, all right, well then Zillow gets to have it, but otherwise,
because there's some, work involved. So.
But I think it's a good asset to the people using it.
oh, absolutely, yeah. Was there anything else, Chris, that you wanted to talk to us about?
That's all I have right now.
I'll make a motion to approve the recorder's quarterly report.
Second,
Motion by Derby, second by Jensvold. All in favor, say aye.
aye,
Thanks.
Ah,
Thank you.
thank you. All this stuff done online and things over the internet, it's all a great tool if it was just all done by honest people. But there was only everybody being honest. Wouldn't it be nice?
I'd be out of a job.
If there were no dishonest people, you'd be out of a job.
I'd be out of a job.
Oh, golly.
I try to report happy news all the time. But there's always some dumb fool out there that makes it more interesting.
I used to love, I never missed Paul Harvey, sometimes listened to it a couple times a day on different radio stations when I was driving the truck. And he would do his little dumb criminal
He's got
segment.
it ready for
It's
you.
great stuff.
Thank you.
Guy handing the bank robbing note to the guy, and it's written on one of his, back of one of his checkbook deposit slips.
What was that segment called? Hospital at MI or?
Yeah, it was the dumbest criminal or stupid criminal or something like that.
You can still hear all that stuff online, and it's some of the most uproarious things you've ever heard in your life.
Yeah. When I read those things or hear them or whatever, it makes me feel a lot better about myself. But at least I'm not him.
My favorite was the guy goes into a bank, and this was in downtown Yuma, goes into a bank, robs the bank, goes back outside, his car's out of gas. So what does he do? Go back into the bank, gets on the phone to call to see if he can get a tow truck driver, just announces his name, his address, and what his AAA number is.
Mhm.
And everybody can hear it. So as soon as he walks out the door, the cops are already, they're already there.
Well, I guess he robbed it because he needed money for gas.
Yeah, there you go.
So make sure you got enough for your good.
I know. Left the car running just in case, and they ran out of gas.
Whereas me see, these schools like in New York where, the kids, real high percentage of kids not going to school anymore. So what are they doing? Creating crime.
Mm-hmm.
Morning.
Morning.
As far as maintenance goes, guys are blading end in now, doing full miles, so that's kind of exciting part of spring, I think. We're also buying some crushed concrete from Jan, the concrete plant here in town, so they started crushing for that pile.
I said that meeting on that.
No, it's cheaper.
Just have some guys out on patrolling the roads doing a little pickup today too.
Yeah, there's some guys picking up some garbage.
Yeah, I think it was Bruce in the ditch out by the first curve on the one blacked out.
The crushed concrete, $6 was the price. Ton, $6 ton.
Yeah, some of those guys in the trucks are picking up some of that garbage in the ditch that you can see now again, and then got a few of them on fixing signs and signposts, stuff like that. They got hit over winter and just trying to clean that stuff up. Got,
We're not the only ones with, I saw one mailbox in Minnesota that's sitting on its pole with the door open, all smashed up. So it doesn't happen just here.
no.
Yeah. What do you,
Mechanics are working on mounting our brush cutter. We got two guys that are getting their right-of-way license to run her right now.
Oh, you have to be licensed to run that.
It's a wet blade on it and it runs chemical to kill it,
Oh.
to kill small brush trees and brush.
So like a pesticide applicator's license and.
Yeah. Just have to have the right-of-way portion of the license to do it. So. Got two guys working on that, so
Where do they go to get the training for that?
Nyack. Hopefully we can get that up and running pretty soon. Should cut down on some of that brush.
what do you use the crushed concrete for?
Last year we used it for spot loads in the spring,
On the gravel roads?
on the gravel roads, yep. And that's what we're planning to do again
And that's
this,
coming at a what, inch and a quarter or more?
was it quarter last year, so.
Yep, same.
Just seems like crushed concrete would do a racing for tires.
But you said it breaks down faster than.
Well,
Last year we used it.
jury's out probably.
Last year we used it in like a lot of the mud holes, and then it sealed them up real nice and tight.
I suppose it, concrete would suck moisture.
Yeah, and it has those concrete fines in it too, so it hardens up nice.
So we wouldn't use it as like a surfacing rack necessarily, more like someplace where it'll get covered up.
Hope, I guess.
Yeah, there's not a lot of, there's, some of it had bar in it but for the most part, what they're crushing is just emptying out the trucks. And
So it's just straight concrete then.
yeah, there's some fiber in it.
When they crush it, you need that has a bar to magnet grab those.
Yeah, they're running 2 magnets, so it's really clean. Hancock County, I think, bought some from them also, and then they're also crushing over someone by Cassuth, and they're buying crushed concrete also. So. Way to cheapen it up a little bit.
Yeah, if you remember, our limestone was going up to like $8.32 or something like that in Fertile.
30, yeah, something.
So, $2.30 plus the hauling from Fertile to Forest City is what we're saving. So,
Yeah, it's,
$4 or $5 maybe. Yeah.
We built my whole circle drive up out of that, and it's been, we're gonna top dress it at the end, but I've been happy with it.
Yeah. It's nice clean stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about maybe possibly mixing it on some of those gravel roads that are a little bit slimier when it rains. Try to give some more structure to the roads. We're gonna play around with it a little bit more this year.
now I can see where it would have a drying property to it.
He was actually talking, I think they're gonna do some recycled concrete out of it too. They're on the guys
Oh,
at
there, right?
John's.
Try and remix it.
Yeah. Can't use it for road stuff, but
Yeah.
Do they have to crush it finer then or something?
yeah, well, they can take all the fines out of it, screen it,
Oh, sure.
and then reintroduce it.
Oh, that's cool.
Do they have like some kind of a roller thing for crushing it down to make it, because you'd want it almost powderized again.
Might crush it tighter.
The limestone that they use in concrete is usually 3/4 minus with, not much fines on the tail end. So I'm sure I would think they could make that.
The screens separate everything from the sides.
I was just, what kind of a mechanism they got for crushing it? Must be some kind of a roller it runs through or something.
Is it an impact crusher? Just like a catapult that throws things against a wall, basically.
Oh, is that right?
No kidding.
Yeah, it's, kind of rudimentary, I guess, compared to like our gravel crushing. They call it a cone crusher, which is altogether a different type of mechanism for crushing.
I've seen the guys, Armstrong over there, they crush the cement out of the Buffalo's burn pit out there. There's a lot of concrete gets dumped out there.
Mhm.
I've seen the crusher there, but I've never gone out to see exactly how it works.
Yeah.
I thought about stopping and
Well,
taking a look at it.
I'm pretty sure Fleener crushed their last pile.
Oh, did he?
Last fall, yeah.
I know, but what is the construction company out of? They haul a lot of rock.
Michelson has a crusher.
Michelson, yeah. That was one I noticed the last time. If Leader was out there, I didn't see him.
Yeah. I think crushing concrete's definitely, something you gotta monitor closely. If you got a real dirty pile or a lot of bar in it, there can be some problems, but I think we got the right product here.
I think with the bar, they usually take the pinchers and crush it enough to get the
Yeah,
bar.
we had some bridge beams crushed when we did the asphalt pile out at Sunnyside, and some metal got through in that process, but, the amount of metal they got out of it was amazing. If you see those bridge beams, they're like half steel,
So that's about what we're up to at the moment.
Okay.
No notice of frost boils yet or anything?
I haven't got a single call about it that I know of.
I haven't noticed any on the gravel roads I've been on.
The only thing I've noticed so far is hometown market parking lot.
As always,
Heavy truck
yeah.
traffic is starting to crack and,
Their parking lot fell apart a couple times.
one spot in my driveway going up to my house that already healed up.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll get lucky.
yeah, have a short year of spot loads again maybe and get right into resurfacing earlier possibly.
Makes it go farther.
Number 4, guys. Consider for approval utility permit for WCTA to bury fiber optic in the vicinity of 500 and 510th Street between 110th Avenue and 140th.
A relatively small project to bury fiber optic. There was maps with the permit that Eric sent out.
Mhm.
This is up north of Thompson toward the Minnesota border. Pretty straightforward. We, as we have in the past, will bury these in the shoulder of gravel roads and in the back slope of paved roads. We have them bore underneath culverts and underneath paved roads to minimize disturbance to the roads. And then another note on here is they included in the map some state line roads that we don't maintain, so we just included a note that they need to get permission from those other entities for that. Do you have any questions?
Suppose that's your district. Huh?
We'll let you make
Oh.
a motion.
I will. I'll make the motion to approve the utility permit for WCTA burying fiber optic in the vicinity of 500 and 510th between 110th and 140th.
I'll second it.
Motion by Smith, seconded by Jensvold. All in favor, say aye.
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 So where's the 440th one?
That was the one that's just a repair.
You know, it's it's a new line to replace a damaged line. It says it was damaged by gophers.
That's what I remember reading it. But it made me think of the gopher and Caddyshack.
Of course it did.
Yeah, this one's just north of Thompson, the crossroad. Nearest is 100th Avenue, 440th Street. Just a little bit east of there, it looks like. Just 2,700 feet, so a little over half mile is all.
I'll make a motion to approve the utility permit for WCTA to bury fiber optic on 440th Street.
I'll second.
Motion by Jensvold, seconded by Derby. To approve the utility permit for WCTA. All in favor, say aye.
I would assume they're gonna have Bill Murray and a crew for repairing that.
I was asking WCTA if they were getting their fiber optic backed up 2 years.
Was that right? Just to get the fiber optic cable
They did
itself?
some dealing, wheeling and dealing to get enough to get going.
Yeah. Well, they've done an awful good job as far as fiber optic goes for a rural area. We're one of the best there is.
Standing up in Howard Lake right now.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen.
Chris and
Have a good day.
You too?
Chris, we're ready for you.
Some gophers eat nuts, berries, and fiber optic.
When they show up to repair that, how come I just know I'm gonna hear
Gopher jumping out of the hole. What are you doing?
it. I got a plastic explosion here today.
That is phone.
I would agree, Sue, but
God,
Somebody about there.
I think it's that.
You say with me, huh? I got your back.
Chris, do you have any other drainage matters, quick ones, or?
Yeah, I wanted to let you know, Jeremy Rognus did call the other day, and I talked to him about 2725, and I told him to call you or Ethan. Hi, Ethan was involved. I don't know if he's done that yet, but I said we just wanted to kind of have an estimate of what might need to be done and to get you guys for specifics. So,
Ethan did stop up and say that the city is gonna take that tree down. And so, he said that Jeremy probably won't need to do anything
oh, okay,
because, Ethan, did you talk to Jeremy about
Rognus?
that tree?
I did talk to Jeremy, I'm
Okay.
supposed to meet with him sometime this week.
Okay,
The city is gonna take that tree out,
okay.
so I don't know if you want that spot. The city's gonna take that tree out where that root problem is, so I don't know if you wanna go with repairing it at the moment, or if you wanna just see if that root.
We're just gonna do the tree, I think, aren't we?
That's
Okay.
what we thought, right? I mean, that's the culprit, right?
Is there more roots at all?
There's a little bit in there, but we're gonna let it sit for a little bit and then maybe we'll go back and jet it again
If he's
here.
gonna dig it out, that'll help eliminate the source of the problem.
But do we need Rognus then?
Well, there's that one manhole downstream.
That you still want to have it fixed?
Yeah, that's sucking water.
Okay, okay. Just want to make sure that we need it.
So leave the tile for now and then just fix the manhole.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Thank you.
And then DD 11, there was some confusion. The first notice went out, it must have been for between the road and the
Mm-hmm.
river.
Mhm.
Okay. I was getting calls on it, and the only one I really knew about was the one above the road. And the two were getting confused.
Yes, and when I sent out the first letter, I didn't know that the second part was going to be done. Because in the meantime, Bill came in with the petition to clean the rest. So at the time, I only knew we were going to start with that river part.
I did look at the upper part of, up towards the other road, and it looks like there's a pretty good opening there with no trees, so
Okay.
you shouldn't have any problems. The one thing I was wondering, does that go all the way to DD10 then?
No, it's just going to that mile.
I'm just looking at that.
Because-
Road to DD10, it does, did that ever get cleaned out?
That was done by Mr. Anderson himself personally a few years ago.
Yeah, it doesn't look great.
We are not going to mess with
Brian Young has joined.
All right.
So,
Okay, well, I think it's 9:30. Robert Hanson, Ted Hubda, attorney to discuss DD5 plat 19.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I have Robert Hanson here with me and also David Hemminger, who is one of the other landowners affected, and Mark Kingland, who is farming the farm that is owned by Mr. Hanson. I have copies that I got from Mr. Young of the agreement that was entered into by the parents of Mr. Hanson, Mr. Heimendinger, and also Arlen Rauch, who is the stepfather of Mr. Eggsdahl, and Margaret Larson, who is owned a farm at north and west, I believe, of this property at issue. I don't know, have you seen this agreement?
they all have copies.
You all
We
have
have
copies? Okay. All right. At the conclusion of the last meeting, in June of 2021, it was understood that there was going to be no further, that Mr. Eggsdahl was supposed to be getting with his attorney to set up an agreement between the parties. That hasn't occurred as yet. We're hoping that it will occur, but the issue today for Mr. Hanson is he was not one of the signatories of the petition that was filed, the initial petition, and that Mr. Eggsdall filed it without either the knowledge of Mr. Heimendinger or Mr. Hanson, who are the ones that have the private open waterway that runs into Bear Creek eventually. And their parents had agreed to allow the water from Mr. Eggsdall's mother at the time property, now his, I guess, to run into their open ditch. And as you saw in the agreement, the parties, the county put in a tile under the road and ran it from right of way to right of way to allow that water to pass. I don't know if there's a problem with that on his side or not, but it was decided, as I understand it, not to pursue replacing the county tile, which was badly in disrepair, and Mr. Kingland is well aware of that. They did put a tile in on Mr. Hanson's property with an intake, but that doesn't affect the ditch itself. So we're just here to ask that the county reconsider having Mr. Hanson pay for any portion of the engineer's fees, because the engineer's fees were accrued due to Mr. Eggsdall's petition, which was not a petition that should have been filed. He wasn't the owner of the open ditch. It should have required 2 signatures. Neither Mr. Heimendinger or Mr. Hanson were even aware that it had been filed until they received the notice from the county. So that's our request for today. I guess I'd defer to Mr. Young to add anything that he wishes.
Mr. Young, are you there?
I am. I just was going to respond to any questions that the board might have.
Mm-hmm.
But if you'd like, I can give you a little bit of direction.
All right.
Certainly.
Okay. I think it's up to the board to make a determination at this point as to a just and equitable assessment of those costs. The costs, I think, are something that are inherent in the operation of the district. And then once those costs are incurred, even if the annexation doesn't go through, I think then the board's task is to make an assessment of those costs to the landowners within the district on what they consider to be a fair and equitable basis. And so if you've determined that the assessment of the cost is just and equitable in making that assessment, then I think you leave it where it is. There are provisions that allow you to go ahead and revise those if you feel that the original assessment was improper or incorrect. But that would be the test for you today. And then that test would be applied to all of the facts that exist here.
So do we have the costs in here?
There's a copy of the 2 invoices that were paid to the engineering fees.
Sure.
So both this one. And this one.
Chris, do you want to go through that for us, the costs on that?
What do you mean?
So I'm just looking on the,
So page 1 is what?
Page 1 is the classification schedule for DD5 Lat 19 when the ditch was reclassified. The second page is what was actually billed to the landowners for the last, in July for the September payment,
For the engineering fees.
for the engineering fees. throughout the booklet is the actual invoices that were paid to Jacobson Westergaard.
So the engineering portion of it. On what page here?
I'm not exactly sure which page.
That's all right, I'll just,
I put it in chronological order.
towards the back, okay. So it's $407.50.
And then a few pages after that is one for $2,465. A few pages before it, my apologies.
There it is. So we're talking about $4,000, right?
Whatever the two add up to be.
Total is 3,051.93. That's on the second page is what was billed.
Oh, right there. And so I want to make sure that I understand what you're wishing for.
Our, Mr. Hanson's position is that he was billed an excessive amount, that he shouldn't have been billed at all because the engineer was hired before the petition was given, they were given the opportunity to have input on the petition. Would have preferred or should have waited until, in fact, the petition was approved and as being appropriate. It wasn't appropriate. 468.6 of the Iowa Code says that two or more of the landowners must apply for the petition. In this case, you only had one, and he wasn't even a landowner for the ditch itself. They hook into the ditch from across the road, but they don't own the ditch. The ditch is owned by Mr. Heimendinger and Mr. Hanson only. And the engineering should, I guess, our position is the cart kind of got before the horse. The engineer was hired before the petition was approved, and the petition should never have been approved. And you, in fact, did not approve the petition.
Here's what I found.
You decided to leave it pretty much as is with the parties to work it out privately as far as how they were going to share costs in the future. And they're still willing to do that, but they haven't received anything from Mr. Exdahl, who at the conclusion of your June 2nd meeting was the one who was kind of told the ball was in his court. He was to go visit with his attorney and get something done. They've gotten nothing.
And he hasn't done that yet and has been told to do that.
Yes, right.
So I need to understand too, do we always have two people on the petitions, Chris?
No, and I did not know that it was supposed to be two. I've had one for 12 years and never had an issue.
That's where I was wondering.
I was gonna say, we have almost every petition's only got one person on it. But there's supposed to be two landowners on every one.
Well, that's the way I read 468.6. You can visit with Mr. Young about that. Mr. Young, do you have a different reading?
Well, I think what you're talking about is the petition for the establishment of an original district. and in this case, there was already a district in place, correct? And this was a petition for an annexation of a ditch, is that correct?
That's
Yes.
correct, exactly.
Yeah, so I think that's the distinction.
And we have in the past brought in a private ditch, and it was signed by a landowner, and it was brought in and no one had a complaint. So when this came up, no one thought that there would be a complaint. Should we have done it different? Maybe, but at the time with what we had, that's what we did.
Yeah, Mr. Henson.
I just want to mention that the document that came to Heimendingers and myself said that we had requested that the county take over our private ditch. And neither Mary Beth, nor David, nor I had made such a request. And that was the first we were even aware that something was going on. And so that document was totally false, because we never made that request. And that the document specifically said that, we had made that request.
And if that, I believe you, I mean, if that's what that said, that might have just been a misspoke. Because there was a petition, it didn't come from you.
And at that time when the petition came, I didn't know who the landowners were. The same as the other petition that we brought in private ditch, I didn't know who the exact owners were.
Mhm.
Well, again, we contend that Mr. Heimendinger and Mr. Hanson had no knowledge of it, and that Mr. Eggstall filed this without their knowledge and asked to have a ditch that was owned by them and not him included in annexed by the county, essentially. And I don't think that the agreement that you have before you, where the four parties signed it, in any way gives any form of ownership of that ditch to Mr. Eggstall. In other words, he was asking to have a ditch annexed that he had no ownership interest in.
Well, our contention on this was that this ditch cut through an existing drainage district. And we felt like it was in disrepair below that, and we had to get an engineer involved to look at that and determine what needed to be done. There was no documentation, I don't believe anywhere, was there, that there was permission to cut the district tile.
Well, you're presuming the district tile was cut. Mr. Kingland, I believe, will tell you that the district tile was already in disrepair before that ditch was ever put in.
And that's why the ditch was extended to the road and the culvert was put in as per that 91
But
agreement.
just stating that when you do that process, you have to work with the district. The district has to give permission to do that.
And it's there in that agreement, 91 agreement.
That was just signed
And
by
if
Nate.
it was in disrepair, why didn't the landowners at that time tell the trustees to get it repaired?
It's in the agreement.
I mean, if it was in disrepair long before that ditch was dug, why did nobody come forward and say it was in disrepair and needed to be fixed?
Well,
They did, and it's in the agreement.
his land is peat ground. Peat ground is low. And keeping a ditch or a county tile in repair in peat ground is very difficult to do because it's very shallow. And I don't know when the 10-inch tile that was part of the county tile went into disrepair. I don't know that, and I don't know that any of these folks know that either. They just know that the parties met on the whatever day of May in 1991, and with the agreement of the county engineer at the time, Mr. Witt, entered into this document. I assume he's the author of the document. I don't know that for a fact, but it was never put in form to be recorded, and it was never recorded. We didn't find out about it until yesterday.
But even if the engineer's name is on here, that doesn't mean the trustees of the district approved of it. Because there was no documentation in this district information that the trustees approved it. So unless you have that, I don't know, he would have been the drainage engineer at the time for the county, but I don't know that he had the ability to approve that.
It would have had to come before us, or before
Right.
the board at the
It
time.
might be a recommendation from him, but we have no documentation that I know
No,
of.
there's nothing in the board minutes, in the drainage minutes.
Well, and and we just found out about this yesterday, I got this from the attorney, it was provided to the county apparently on the 22nd of March, so that was the first you were aware of it as well. So are you saying that the entire district was taxed with these engineering costs? Because Mr. Heimendinger are you part of the district?
Yeah, well, yeah, I didn't get a bill,
No.
but that's fine with me.
He is not part of lateral 19.
It's only the lateral.
Just lateral 19 was billed for this because it started with lateral 19. And because Mr. Heimendinger's water actually goes right to the direct ditch. So he's
Yeah.
a part of the main ditch, but not this particular lateral.
Yeah,
But he is the owner of the land that Open Ditch ran across. And I don't believe there's anything in the record that indicates that these folks, by putting a surface ditch in any way, interfered with the county tile. They put it over the county tile. You know, you don't have to create a ditch unless the county tile is very, very shallow. You don't have to disturb it at all to put an open waterway across it. You just have to make a depression where the water can run.
But they cut the tile, to our knowledge, the tile was cut.
There's an outlet,
Even-
and then there's a tile going out the other way.
At that time, the tile was all broken up anyway, it didn't work. And so that's why it was extended to the road to allow, rather than put in a brand-new county tile, it was agreed by the county engineer and the landowners to just make that solution. And that's what was done.
it was kind of a Band-Aid solution, that 91 agreement. Now, if I remember right, there was a driveway, earth driveway from between Dad's place and then Franklin Hansen's. My dad had rented his farm at the time, so I assume that county tile went through that earth bridge between the two farms. And after my dad quit renting it, I think it was Erie Colton that had it taken out. So and I suppose that, that 91 agreement, the first I was aware of it was the other day when I talked to Mark Egestall, and he informed me about it. And so that was news to me that there was a 91 agreement, but it just appears that was a Band-Aid fix for a pretty bad in shape county tile.
Well, one of the reasons they wanted to go with this agreement and do things the way they did is because the cost of repairing Lat 19 was much higher.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, nobody disputes that.
Yeah.
And had we had the horse before the cart, would the expenses been any different?
If you had denied the petition, there wouldn't have been any expenses, is what we're contending. If you'd have just said, no, we're not gonna do anything about this because the landowners of the open ditch are objecting.
Mr. Young, can we deny
Yeah.
a petition for repair?
Can you deny a petition? Yes, that's the purpose of the hearing. You at a hearing, you can determine that the costs, for example, outweigh the benefit to the landowners. And in that situation, you could deny the petition.
Doesn't there have to be a remonstrance?
No, that's only in
That's a-
improvements.
That's improved.
That's an improvement,
Okay.
correct?
And because none of us knew about the agreement in 1991, we went with the information that we had at the time. Had we had this right away, that could have changed everything. But nobody knew it.
We didn't have it.
Right.
I don't know where Mr. Exall came up
He
with
found it in his mom's paperwork. That's what he told me when he brought me the copy. There was a lot of paperwork, so he was just sifting through it and found this. He did not know it existed either.
Mr. Heimendinger and Mr. Hansen were aware that there had been a meeting of the minds, but they didn't know if it was ever set down.
Yeah, nobody,
As
and you
did
guys had
everybody
said that
else.
before, that you didn't know if it was ever written down. Nobody knew it.
It should actually been recorded in the
Exactly.
courthouse
Yep,
at the
and
time.
it should be in your abstracts for future landowners.
should, yeah.
So an agreement, we have no dispute with that. An agreement should be, if it's gonna continue as is, there's not gonna be a county tile across Mr. Hansen's ground, and the county tile is not gonna be repaired, then that agreement needs to be put it in more proper form and make it recordable. It's gotta be notarized, it's gotta have a lot of different, things going on with
And
it.
I think Mr. Eggestall, in getting the future use of that ditch and cleaning of it, will have to include this.
Right.
And then get that all recorded for all of them,
Right.
right?
And then we would have to reclassify things, or would we?
I think you've already abandoned that.
No,
portion.
we're not abandoning it until that agreement is done.
Okay.
Yep, that was what was in that.
Because the option is still there to fix it.
The issue at hand, though, is the bill that we have. And we have a bill, and the bill belongs with DD 19.
And whoever DD 19 is on is responsible for it.
Correct.
DD 5.
DD 5, Lat 19.
Or Lat 19.
Yes.
Thank you for clarification.
The bill is theirs, and you're saying you want who to pay for it?
Not Mr. Hanson.
Not me. The whole thing is premised on a fictitious request by Heimendinger and both Mary Beth and David and myself that we requested the county take over our ditch. And then the county moved ahead and had the engineer do this study based on this fictitious request by us. So on that fictitious request, this occurred. And had you guys done your job properly and reviewed the requests by David and me, which is required by law, none of this would have occurred in the first place.
But we didn't have all the information, so how could we have done our jobs properly?
By looking, the state code requires that you guys look at the requests, the written requests of Heimendinger's and myself. And there was no request, so you guys did not follow Iowa code. Granted.
What we're saying is that the petition itself shouldn't have been granted and the engineer shouldn't have been hired. That's what we're, our Mr. Hanson's position.
How have we handled this before? I've only been here for
Well,
a
we
year and a half.
Really
Is
not
there-
had any challenges like this. I know this is not an actionable item for us today.
Mhm.
I guess I'm of the opinion that we did, to the best of our knowledge, what we needed to do for the petition. That you guys can
Yeah.
voice your opinions on it, but
Yeah, I feel like we did the best we could do with the information that we had. I do agree that if that original letter stated U2, it was probably a misspeak. It was probably and it should have just said Eggestall or whatever when the letter went out. So, do we have that letter? Actually?
Yes, I have it.
Do we have it in our packets?
Does that actually have this letter, I wonder, where we all signed it? Is that complete? Letter?
No. Ask the attorney if he's got it.
Okay. Nick will read it.
Can I ask Mr. Young a question? Mr. Young, were you aware of a letter of April 21st to the drainage clerk from Ms. Oswald from Mr. Hanson, signed by Heimendingers as well?
Yes.
I think I was provided with a copy of that, yeah.
And that's basically their objection at the time?
Yes, that's been given to everybody. And the resolution is what he's talking about that was approved, where it said, whereas the landowners of the land along the route of said open ditch wish to have the open ditch become part of the Winnebago County. So that was in the resolution, that is, what was rescinded. So that's where he's getting his, that they didn't ask for that. And I believe that the Jacobson Westergaard came up with that resolution.
The engineering was just to find where the thinking actually was, is that what it was?
The engineer was hired to reclassify that. If they were gonna add the ditch, that would be a different lateral. So it had to reclass lateral 19, and then we were gonna call it lateral 43. So there would be two classifications instead of the one. That's what he was hired to do. And then, as more things came on, you know, then they helped with the resolution to bring that in. And then we haven't used him since.
But even without the agreement between the parties, the request for reclassification of the ditch was made by someone that didn't own the ditch or the property of the ditch whatsoever, and the engineering study would be of no benefit whatsoever to Bob, because his water all drains to the north to that ditch privately. And the county tile going through it, when we've started farming it, was basically busted up the whole way. Mark Johnson fixed it many times until he got tired of it and said, I'm just gonna put in a new section, which he did from a large intake in the middle of the field there going to the south. From the north, I don't think there's any water that even comes down that tile from the north, which the county knew, which is why they extended the ditch to the road and put a culvert under it to allow Agostino's water to drain to the ditch and then through the road down into Hanson's and Heimendinger's ditch.
And my recollection from Mr. Egestall when he first came in was the last time it was cleaned, they pretty much didn't clean his end, which gave him no outlet.
Okay.
So that was his whole thing, was now he doesn't have an outlet. So he wanted to bring that ditch in because he wanted it cleaned so he could have an outlet. We didn't know that he didn't own it. A petition was brought to the trustees.
Yeah, no, and I understand that you didn't know that, but that, I guess, as I look at it, doesn't constitute penalizing Bob because you guys didn't have all that information.
Well, the other landowners haven't complained on the 5-lot 19.
I don't know what ones are. So.
You know what I mean? Nobody else has complained about the invoice that they got for a tax on their tax statement.
again, if Mr. Exdahl wants to have it cleaned, then we need to have an agreement between the three of them as to who's gonna pay what.
Right, and that's
And
that's what will
that's
happen.
not your
It just
concern.
hasn't happened yet, and then we will be out of it.
And that
As
was
far
our
as
directive
trustees.
to him.
Yeah,
And it should be paid for on a percentage of drainage.
Right, and I had given him the classifications that, the schedules of the lat 19 and the, what would have been lat 43. For their, what the assessment would have been.
Did this engineering, you mean after the fact, say had everything been done properly, and then after the fact, did this engineering have been needed anyway?
no. In my estimation, it would not have been needed because all it would have required is the same thing we're looking for now, is to try to get an agreement between the landowners, Exdal's, and probably Larson, whoever owns Larson land now. I don't.
U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
Okay. So they're probably out of it because they don't want
They
to.
don't pay.
They must get enough money there.
Right.
So it'd be the
Good
three
luck.
parties, three parties that have to determine how much, and I don't know how much needs to be cleaned, if it's just the north end, the west end,
Just the private ditch.
but then does the whole ditch need to be cleaned, or just?
Every 15, 20 years, yeah.
And they're willing to do that. I mean, the ditch is valuable to them as well, and it needs to be cleaned. They understand that, but that needs to be a private agreement. Like I said, we don't feel that the engineering should have happened at the point that it happened. They should have been given the opportunity to come in and say, no, we don't want to have another lateral, and we own the ditch. And they own the ditch, no question about that. And they, like I said, to your point, I don't believe they destroyed any tile. The tile was already in bad disrepair when they created the ditch. None of us were involved in that decision-making process because their fathers were still alive. But, they only know anecdotally what happened back then. But now we know you didn't have the benefit of that last year when you made these decisions, that any sort of agreement existed. And the agreement itself is silent as to any cost sharing, which should have been included at the time, but it wasn't. And that's, like I said, our major complaint is the engineering shouldn't have happened until it was determined that this matter was to go forward. And I don't think it can go forward with the objection of the parties that own the ditch.
Mr. Young, do you have anything to add?
Well, I understand the position that Mr. Hansen is advocating, but I think from the board's perspective, where you are now is you've incurred an expense on behalf of the district. You paid that expense. At least the invoice I saw was marked as paid. It was paid, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the board on behalf of the district has incurred an expense, and now it has to be paid for. And the board is entitled to issue levies to recoup those expenses. It's an unfortunate situation, but the fact of the matter remains that expenses were incurred on behalf of the district. They were incurred by the board for the benefit of the landowners. At least that was the mindset that I understand the board operated under, is that they were looking to incur these expenses for the benefit of those landowners. And now the board has to determine whether the allocation or assessment of those expenses was just and equitable, whether it be made on the classification schedule basis or some other basis.
Okay, thank you.
And it seems to me that is what I heard the board considered. Maybe did not openly articulate that as the basis for their decision, but it sounded to me like that was what occurred. And based on the documents I received prior to today, that's the impression I had from reviewing those materials.
Even though the basis for this whole thing was on a false premise, and the law wasn't followed.
Mr. Young, would you like to respond to that?
Well, I didn't know if that was a rhetorical statement or
No, no,
whether
that's
that
what
was a
it
question.
That's a good question.
Yeah, that doesn't alter my opinion. The fact remains that the expenses have been incurred on behalf of the district, they've been paid, and now they have to be allocated.
So if expenses are incurred in error, it's the other landowners that get assessed for it either way.
If they were to take away Mr. Hansen's portion, the other landowners would have to take that portion up and pay it.
Or take it out of the general fund of the county.
The county doesn't own the district.
County just acts as a trustee for the landowners here. She's correct about that.
Just an opinion, but the guy who initiated the petition should incur the expense, but that's just my opinion.
And then you could argue that today's expenses should be paid by Mr. Hansen because the other landowners don't want this either.
Right.
Because now there will be another expense to the district for today, for Mr. Young's time.
This would have all been probably rectified if this document would have been filed properly back in 1991.
Yeah.
And that would have been up to all of the landowners to do, not just one or two. I feel like all of them should have done it.
Well, by rights way, the engineer Witt should have said, well, this is something that needs to be recorded. You know, this is an
It looked
important
more like a
document.
document that allowed for it to be done in the right of way, not necessarily a drainage district. So that's why we felt like it was still in the district.
Okay, well, it's not actionable
No.
today,
Well,
so.
there is no recourse or way for us to bill it to,
Somebody else.
because in theory, what you're wanting is the county to absorb this bill. And how, there is no pathway to having that happen, is there?
No, the district doesn't own, the county doesn't own a district.
I think,
So even if we wanted to, probably couldn't.
And if you feel that you don't want to change what had happened, there is no action to take at all. If you wanted to make a change, then you would want it on next week's agenda.
I think everyone here acted in good faith. I think Chris did her job. I think we did our jobs, you know. We have lots of drainage districts and lots of petitions and lots of engineering. And sometimes more people pay for more of it than other people in the district.
How many times you guys submit a false document though?
To our knowledge, none.
Except this one.
Nobody knew that it was a false document.
Heimendinger and I did.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, I hate to dig into it deeper, but I mean, Mark, under false pretenses, said all the owners of the ditch want it reclassified to a public ditch. Well, I mean.
He didn't say that.
Oh, he didn't?
He
Well,
wanted it done.
Okay.
A landowner wanted it done.
Well, he said something that wasn't true. So, you know, there should be some legal,
Well,
responsibility.
What it sounded like when he first came in was that he was under the understanding that there was an original agreement. He didn't have it at that time, but according to his mother, there was an agreement, and that there was not cooperation by the other landowners to allow him to have drainage. And that's where we were trying to help him, because he was technically still in the district.
And the only way you could get drainage was to repair lat 19, right?
Right, which would have been very
Which was
expensive.
way more expensive for everybody.
Yeah.
And we could have gone that direction as well. I mean, we could have repaired
And
Flat
at that
19.
time, had we known that it was cut, even though it was in disrepair before, it could have been given back to the owners of the ditch who cut through it. That's what we did with DD 5 Lot 5. We made him fix it.
But we can cut it off so it's,
So,
I get more land back.
So I guess that's our explanation for why we did what we did and why we're standing with what.
Again, it was
Yeah.
Exdal that wanted to do it. I only have a little bit of land that goes, drains into lat 19 at the very south end. So if we want to put in and Heimerdinger has nothing that goes into that lat 19. So maybe the best thing to do is to fill in the ditch to no longer accommodate Exdal, put in a brand new county tile, and based on, I don't have hardly any that drains into lat 19, let Exdal and whoever else, based on the percentage of land, go ahead and pay for the brand new tile, and that way I won't have to ever deal with this stuff again, because this is, again, it's based on a false premise from the get-go, and this never should have happened, never should have happened.
But-
And it's all starting with Exdal.
But Bob, if you do that, and the expense to everyone is a lot greater.
That's okay.
But Mark would probably say that tile is gonna be junk in
It is.
a matter of a few years. So why spend the money to make a junky tile? I mean, it would be good at the initial phase, but, in that type of ground, it's not gonna last.
No, if they can't go deep enough, just 2 feet deep, I don't know if it would be, even a legal county tile being that shallow in the peat ground.
Yeah.
So,
You'd almost have to, in order to fix it properly, you'd have to make an improvement probably to make the,
Start at the ditch,
And,
the lower ditch
And move north.
go all the
so
way.
then you're talking even more money.
probably places would be 25, 30 feet deep, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
and Mr. Eggestall he was billed $1,100 for this project and you were billed $1,000. He has just a hair more benefited acres than you do. You have 25.
No, I don't,
7.
because mine drains to the north.
According to the engineering classification,
Well, it doesn't. I mean, I don't care whatever it's saying, because I gave Susan Smith a copy of my tile, and it drains to, you've seen, I don't know if you ever looked at it, but it drains to the north. It doesn't, just a little bit drains to the south, like about 7 acres drains to the south, everything else drains to the north.
But until we reclassify it and take it out of that district, nothing official was ever done, because we had no knowledge of that.
that needs to be sent to the engineer at the time when we had our classification hearings. That could have been brought up to the engineer, and at that time, he could have.
When were the
done-
classification hearings?
Well, letters were sent. We had to have a classification hearing for DD 5
When did that happen? I guess when
in
did that-
2019.
in
The
2000.
whole district.
The whole district
The
was
large
reclassified.
So that would have been the time to rebut that, or
Because even
then,
Susan has done that in a classification schedule
a
and
number
brought
of
in her
times.
tiles, and some things were lowered because of it.
Several
But if we
people.
don't know that, because we are not concerned with private tile, we don't know.
So if you have private tile, you have to prove where it goes. Otherwise, they have no idea where that water goes.
The engineers are
Unless
doing with
there's-
what they have.
Any other discussion?
make one more comment, that this is based on a flawed process. You guys signed off on something not according to Iowa code. Heimendinger and I did not submit a request like you guys signed off on to take over our private ditch. So this whole thing is based on a false, well, term, a false premise or a falsified document, maybe is better.
Not falsified, it just turned out to be
Incorrect.
Incorrect.
It's nobody intentionally falsified it.
I don't think there was
Intentions.
ever any ill intent at all. Okay, anybody have anything that they want to say in closing? Mr. Young?
No, I don't think so. I don't have anything to add unless you have any other questions for me.
Any questions?
Nope.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
I'll sign off then.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brian Young.
Has left.
Brian West.
What?
Brian West.
It's for Metaphor Dodge.
It's not like IDDA or.
All right. And you didn't have anything else on other drainage?
I did not, no, on
activity?
drainage, no, I'm good, thank you.
All right, open forum.
I don't know how you can read that, but.
So I got one pretty broken form. At a meeting today, I falsely thought that it was turbines or whatever, but I'm a little concerned over what the legislature just passed. There's some good stuff in it. And also the new, what do they call it?
Replacement tax?
The power, whether the tax on the power instead of.
Well, that's only if you don't have something in place, which we have
Well,
something
no,
in
but
place.
that's what it says is that if you don't have that in place, that you can still have these things come, you don't just go the other way around. So if the counties have
That's for open forum.
lost control. But, they are having a meeting today. Evidently, there's a proposed solar power field up at Buffalo Center. In Buffalo Township.
Are you going to it? Or is it this morning?
No, it's not for turbines in a sense, it's for
Oh.
solar power.
Oh, okay.
Which isn't as intrusive to your neighbors. If you want to use your ground for that, I guess you. The turbines are.
Sorry.
I think all the solar runs through the replacement tax, doesn't it?
I would guess.
Yeah. I don't know how they structured all that.
Well, it just sounds like to me that if they have a choice of how they're gonna do that, they would, none of them wanna go for property taxes, they'll all go through that production. Yeah. And if they're given that choice, is that gonna be retroactive to existing ones?
I think, understood right, if you're putting it on the grid, I think that's the way it already is. Not sure. But if you're, say, like a school doing their solar, that's a different category. But, and I think the one up here on the top of the hill, that just comes to the city, not the grid. Whereas that one's gonna go on the grid. So there's two different categories there.
It sounds like to me that if they go with the power tax, with the first we would know about turbines going up is when they started construction. They don't have to go through the county for anything. I think I should go over to the emails from the supervisors as
You know, that Heather Stinson. but they don't have something in place. That's her
Yeah,
problem.
no, yeah, so now, it also says that, in the last one, it says you should have an ordinance in place. Now, does our,
It should cover that.
Did I ever send it to
It's
you?
the
That
zoning-
should-
It's the
You
zoning
might have.
we have that covers it.
our special use permit will
Allow
Gives
us
us,
to
right.
have, that goes through our zoning adjustment and all that. That's the way I understand it. And I don't know, I would say our zoning administrator would be able to tell us that.
I mean, as long as our special use permit protects us, because we didn't use, they're not zoned, is what it is. I guess we're already zoned, right?
We're zoned for, in respect of anything like that outside of agriculture. It'd be a special use permit.
I just get nervous because it just seems like they're just trying to take more and more local control away all the time. When their incentive for doing it is.
So I can tell you that bill that passed yesterday is definitely gonna help us for next year.
Repurposing.
It doesn't do anything for what happened this last year,
Yeah,
but
but the repurposing.
I
in
know
the
our
future.
assessor denied their request for substantial replacement on the second phase, and with the intention that this is gonna go through, and it did, so we will get the taxes on that one like we had been. We're just losing the ones from last year. But it's all coming back without the 10% rollback, so on that one. So in the long run, we'll get more taxes, depending on what the valuations were. I didn't check to see if valuations went down because of it or if it went up.
Oh, yeah.
So, my concern is if they're gonna figure out how to be able to build improvements without getting anybody's permission.
Maybe we,
All you gotta do is get the landowners to agree to it, and all the landowners don't like it, or just become politics.
it's something we can't really opinionate here during open forum, but at some point we may need to discuss putting a cap on things.
Some counties have done that.
That would control
I
that.
mean, she suggested doing a moratorium or whatever.
Or just a cap on the wattage.
Wattage, and you might have to identify the difference between solar and wind power.
Yeah.
Anything else for open? We have 6 minutes.
Tim?
Do you have the resolution for the election workers? Oops. Always fun in supervisor meetings, isn't it?
You know, I always say the drainage is some of the most compelling.
I noticed that you were hanging on every word.
I couldn't believe how suspenseful this was, but the old Dicker. Got a nice picture of it.
Own it.
Thank you. You're wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
We could probably do number 11 if you want.
Speaking as one of the precinct workers, I just want to say thank you very much for your grace. I appreciate it very much.
Because you're important people.
Does this need to be stamped?
No.
No?
Stated that
It's got a signature spot for you in there.
Oh, yep, it does, and there's a date.
motion to approve the public purpose resolution for precinct election workers.
That what we just did?
Nope.
No,
Oh, we just started it,
done.
okay. I'll second
Started
it.
it, alright. Motion by Jensvold, second by Derby to approve the public purpose resolution for precinct election workers. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Point of question, what is this public purpose?
So that I can buy candy and donuts and things that you don't want.
There you go.
To some do.
In other words, it's things to keep you guys happy, at least temporarily.
Unless we do this, we can't buy it.
Sure, that'll go over big with about 60% of us.
May not be in your long-term benefit, but it'll be in the short-term, instant gratification benefit.
I'll bring carrots and celery and some other things.
But you know,
Granola.
I don't know if you guys would be like when I worked at the school and how much of the carrots and celery that they forced the kids to take on their plates, and I watched how full those garbage cans got with it, because they wouldn't eat it. And it's just like, man, is this a waste of money?
What's the first thing
I suggested that the FFA get their own little hog plot and then dump all the food in it and take it out and feed it to the hogs. At least you get some kind of benefit out of it that way, because there was garbage container. You could only fill them about a third full because the garbage sacks would be so heavy they ran.
It was the first thing that was used in food fights.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't use the stuff.
No, you didn't use the Jello or anything. It was the carrots, man. Ding, that hurts worse.
Yeah, really, we were sitting there, and evidently some of the kids that ate before us, they got a little rambunctious, and then our janitor came in and he saw food on the ceiling. Right away accused me and a friend of mine of doing it. We hadn't done it. And he just knew that we did it. And then my friend, he got disgusted with it. He took his plate. There, now I'm guilty, he goes. Oh, right to the superintendent's office. A little bit of an overreaction. I decided not to throw my plate up.
Would you like to follow along? Oh. It's riveting.
I can't be a administrator. Come on. I'm somebody that I have to protect you. Not exactly the protector.
Are we on to number
We're at 10:30, yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the semi-monthly company payments.
I'll second it.
Motion by Jensvold, seconded by Derby to approve the semi-monthly county claims. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hello.
You've got presents for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Elizabeth.
Good morning, how are you guys?
Wow.
Having fun.
Oh, as always.
Actually, not real good. You got time for a long, sad story?
Is it audit related?
No. It all starts out with I live in a house with 6 females in it. Do I need to go any further?
Poor thing.
That's not near as bad.
So are you guys ready for me then? Sure. Okay. Everybody's got their books?
Yep.
Okay. We'll just go ahead and walk through it like we normally do. And again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, let me know. Our first stop will be page 2 then, which is Gardner and Company letterhead. This is the independent auditor's report. The purpose of an audit is to opine on whether or not the financial statements are fairly presented. As I say every year, the purpose of an audit has nothing to do with finding fraud or errors or irregularities. The audit is designed to opine on whether or not the financial statements are fairly presented. The audit is based on tests and samples. We don't look at every single transaction that goes through the county during the fiscal year, and then we go ahead and opine based on our test work. So for the fiscal year,
You guys can come in. I'm just gonna shut the door because it's not.
so for the fiscal year ended June 30 of 2021, we have issued an unmodified opinion, which that's what you want to hear. That means that the financial statements contained within this book are fairly presented. During the course of audit test work, we did find some material adjustments that needed to be made. We did have proposed adjusting journal entries, which were made so that all those amounts are properly reflected in the financial statements. So then starting on page 5 is management's discussion and analysis. And this just goes ahead and explains the financial highlights for the year. It also talks about what all is in this annual report. The county budget's on the cash basis, so we do have a budget to actual cash comparison for your budgetary funds. The county also presents a modified accrual financial statement, which mirrors what Carla has to go ahead and submit to the Department of Management as the gap report. And then we also have the full accrual financial statements, which include all your capital assets and all of your long-term debt. So these pages just kind of go ahead and explain that. It also provides some comparative information, so you can look at fiscal 21 and fiscal 20, kind of see some changes that have happened. It also gives the county a chance to talk about the budgetary highlights and the economic factors and kind of what the thought process for what was going into the fiscal 22 budget. Now, the actual financial statements then start on page 14 with Exhibit A. And Exhibit A and Exhibit B are your full accrual financial statements. So this is most similar to what you would see in the private sector. These financial statements include your capital assets and all of your debt. If you want to go ahead and look at Exhibit B, that's your statement of activities, similar to what you see as an income statement. The change in net position this year for Winnebago County increased a little over $9 million, which is a very big number. And I just kind of want to touch on that a little bit. A lot of that is related to your FM account with the DOT. This year there was almost $3.9 million of infrastructure and infrastructure improvements that went through your farm to market account at the DOT. And that reflects in your net position. So, like I said, about $3.9 million of that $9 million is that. Also, you started collecting assessments for drainage. You had a large assessment that was collected during this year. So that is also reflected in that $9 million number. Also reflected in that $9 million increase is the ARPA funds that you received in May of 2021 that were just sitting there waiting to be spent. You guys did not spend any of that money during fiscal 21. So all of those things combined make up that large increase in your net position, because that really is significant. Okay, so then continuing on with the financial statements, Exhibit C and Exhibit E are your modified accrual financial statements, and they mirror what is submitted to the Department of Management. It's all your governmental funds. You do have several that are presented as major. This year we have the general mental health, rural services, secondary roads, your urban renewals, your drainage, and your debt service are all presented as major funds. And then we have that non-major column, which is all those little funds that are aggregated and presented as that. So like I said, Exhibit C and Exhibit E, they mirror what was submitted to the Department of Management. And then Exhibit D and F, they reconcile from your modified accrual to your full accrual. So it kind of steps you through what the changes are and how to get from one set of financial statements to the other. Exhibits G, H, and I are your health insurance fund. Not a lot of excitement there this year. You did have net income there on page 30. You can see that.
That was the excitement.
That was the excitement of $29,000 there. And again, health insurance is something that's very difficult to budget for, and the rates have been very volatile in the last couple of years, and it makes it very challenging to budget. But, this year, having that $29,000 in net income, that's a good thing. So seeing that number positive at any point.
It's gone.
It's not gonna be there for next year? Okay.
We're talking 49%.
Oh,
Yeah, they wanted 75, you said?
Or 80,
wow.
we got it.
We have a lot of work to do yet.
Lots of work.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That makes it very challenging.
Oh, yeah, it's not just a couple thousand out of it. You gotta find it's hundreds of thousands.
Well, and it's not like you have a very large cushion in that fund balance at the end of the year either. I mean, 200,000 is nothing in the health insurance world, especially with the number of employees that you have.
Yeah.
So,
Or 29, yeah. Oh my gosh.
okay, so then Exhibit J and Exhibit K are the last of the financial statements in the front of the book, and they are the, in regards to the custodial funds. So, your cities, schools, townships, assessor, 911, everything that kind of the county fiscal agent for, so those funds flow out and go right back out. The net position, though, is made up of what's in the assessor's fund, as that does have fund balance at the end of the year, and then also the 911. On page 34, we start the notes to financial statements, and I am going to skip through the majority of those. It just goes ahead and summarizes significant accounting policies and procedures, which there haven't been any big changes this year. We didn't have any new GASB standards that we had to implement, so there wasn't anything big that changed there. The notes also provide more information about your capital assets. It gives the amortization schedules for your debt. There's several pages of information from the actuary that does the IPERS valuations and also your other post-employment benefits valuations. They both have actuarial disclosures that are required, so we have several pages of disclosures for that. It also talks about your insurance, health insurance, and liability insurance. Winnebago County was a member of Care Connections of Northern Iowa this year, so we do have a disclosure about that on page 58. And then on 59, we have the fund disclosures. We have something about COVID and just that, you know, you're not gonna know the full effect of how it has affected business. So we have disclosure about that. And then also note 15 on page 59 talks about the prospective accounting change. And for fiscal year 2022, we will be implementing the Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 87 on leases. So we'll be working with Carla to go ahead and hopefully you don't have too many leases. And this will apply for, you know, copy machines, postage machines, if you're renting equipment, whether it be, you know, tractors or secondary roads equipment. It also applies if the county is a lessor and is leasing out farmland or, you know, other assets for use. So we'll be working with Carla in the next couple of months to get you guys prepared to implement that for next year. Then on page 60, we have the cash basis budgetary comparison. So the actual column is the actual cash that came in and out of all of your governmental funds. The column that's entitled less funds not required to be budgeted is your drainage, because that is not a budgetary fund. So that gets us to your net. And then we also present the original budget and then the final amended budget and then look for variances. And there are a couple large variances with the intergovernmental revenue is 1.9 million and the capital projects is 1.8 million with the variance. Big numbers, but easily explained. With intergovernmental, you never get grants reimbursed when you think you're going to, so you budget to get the reimbursement. The state doesn't always get it to you when you think it's going to happen. With capital projects, that's a large variance, but again, the weather doesn't always cooperate and projects never seem to progress the way you think they're going to. So even though those are large variances, it's not a red flag by any means. We did have budget over expenditure in the debt service function for this year, and you can see that as the negative variance there. Everything else, again, easily explained and has a reason for everything, so no red flags with any of that. The following pages are some more required supplementary information about the budget and also about the GASB 68 IPERS reporting and also about the OPEB. And then following that, we have Schedule 1 and 2, which are the combining balance sheet and statement of changes for all of the non-major governmentals. So that's all those littler special revenue and capital project funds that are aggregated and presented as non-major in the front of the book. This is the detail for them here in the back of the book. So that would be Schedule 1 and 2. And then Schedule 3 and 4, same thing for your custodial funds. It gives you the detail for their statement of net position and the statement of changes in net position. And then Schedule 5 on page 75, that's your 10-year comparison for the budgetary funds. And then that gets us to page 77, which is some more Gardner and Company letterhead. And that's the independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance. In addition to opining on whether or not the financial statements are fairly presented, we also do some code compliance testing and some internal control test work. A lot of the departments are required to fill out an internal control questionnaire for us because segregation of duties is such a huge thing in local governments. So we go ahead and we do a little bit of test work on this. The state auditor's office does issue a compliance guide to us every year with things that they want us to look for. There's some things that we look at every year. There's some things that we look at every 2 or 3 years. There's some things we throw in for fun every 5 or 6 years, just for the heck of it, to liven it up a little bit. So, and again, this is based on tests and samples. We don't look at everything that might have had an impact on the findings, and then we go ahead and we report on the findings based on our test work. So the findings then actually start on page 79. The first one, of course, is segregation of duties, because you're always going to have that. This finding is in every single audit report that we issue just because of the nature of the local governments in Iowa. You don't have enough people to entirely segregate the custody and the record keeping. So it's possible that one person might handle a transaction from its inception to its completion. So again, we do the internal control questionnaires with the departments every year, and you know, they're doing a good job segregating as much as possible, but you just can't guarantee that there wouldn't be a hiccup. So. The second one is preparation of full disclosure financial statements, and again, this one is in 98% of the reports that we issue, and it's just because you don't have a CPA on staff that's able to do the gap report and also the full accrual financial reporting and prepare all these footnotes that get included in this audit report. So because we assist with that preparation, we are required to put that finding in the report. On page 80, we have the financial reporting finding. This year, there were material amounts of capital asset additions and then proceeds from the issuance of a general obligation refunding note and refunding bonds, and then the refunding transactions. And this, I understand, was just an oversight. The refunding transactions just kind of happen, and they need to get recorded on the county's financial statements. So again, we did propose adjusting journal entries for that, and so they're properly included in the financial statements. Then we get to the statutory reporting items, which start on page 81. And again, you know, the state auditor's office provides us with the compliance guide, things they want us to test every year. The budget is one of those things. And this year we had over expenditure in the debt service function. And then also there were several departments that had exceeded the amounts appropriated. So the recommendation then is for those departments to be watching those budgets monthly, and they need to be communicating with Carla when they get close and might need to make some adjustments. So the next one is about questionable expenditures, and this has been a hot topic with State Auditor Rob Sand in the past couple years, with public purpose being very important. And we'll talk about that with some of the non-report findings also, with his questionable donations is what he had called them. But with the questionable expenditures, making sure that there's public purpose for every expenditure that comes through here. And again, this represents what was tested. It doesn't represent everything that would have happened or would have gone through that might have been a questionable disbursement. This is just representative of what we found during our test work. There was a payment to IPERS for late fees and interest, and then there also was a Visa charge for food for meetings. And so the public purpose hadn't been documented for those particular expenditures, so we have a comment in the reports. And then on page 83, the only other statutory reporting finding we had was about the annual urban renewal report. And it was just oversight that there had been some transfers out from that particular TIF fund to the capital project fund. And that hadn't been included on that annual urban renewal report. And that's really all we had for the statutory findings. So overall, pretty clean audit. We did have some non-report items too that I wanted to bring to your attention, just so that you're aware. Timesheets. You know, not all employees prepare timesheets. And again, that's kind of at the discretion of elected officials, department heads, you know, the board of supervisors, what you require. But the recommendation always is that everybody prepares a timesheet regardless of your status, just so that you have documentation of the hours worked. It protects not only the employees, but also the employer. You've got documentation of what they've worked, and then, you know, when it comes raise time, they've got documentation of what they work. So if that particular job is taking longer, more hours than, you know, what it had in the past, you have that proper documentation. So, and then public purpose for your donations to not-for-profits, which this county really hasn't had a whole lot of that, because I think you did ambulance, Forest City Ambulance might have been one of the only ones that we found during our test work. But that's been a hot topic with Auditor Sand. He issued an interpretation in May of 2020 regarding public entities going ahead and giving donations or contributions to private not-for-profits, so like food banks, crisis intervention, you know, that type of thing, where he did not feel that that was an appropriate use of public dollars. So he kind of changed the rules where there needed to be a 2080 or some kind of, you know, contract for services in place if municipalities wanted to continue making those contributions. But again, you know, you guys have we didn't have any of that in your test work, but, you know, in the future, if you have entities or organizations that come to you and request funding and they're that private not-for-profit status, you know, that's something that you'll need to look into drafting with them. So it's a contract for services, not a contribution.
We don't have a, like, with Forest City paramedics, we don't have a 2080 with them. So in
But
that
see,
case,
that
we
is a city, it's another governmental entity, so that's okay. You don't have to have agreements with anything that is another municipality, or if you have the Historical Society, libraries, the fair associations, those are all covered under the code. So the Code of Iowa allows you to make contributions to those entities.
those are the ones that all came to mind to me.
Yep, but I
The
know,
rest of them, we've been pretty proactive. We've done agreements with RSVP and Elder Bridge and all those. So Kelsey and I have
Mostly
been
covered our bases.
working very hard to get that taken care of.
but like I said, you know, as you're having those entities coming to you and discussing funding requests, that's something you're gonna wanna make sure you consider and get that proper documentation approved, so that way you don't get into trouble down the line, so.
Like going into Heritage Park.
That's
Heritage-
historical.
That's the Historical Society, so
So
we're
that's
okay.
covered too.
We were initially concerned about that, then we found out that historical societies are covered.
So any other questions or concerns or anything else?
Well, not until something comes up.
I'm dying to ask how Tyler's going.
There is one other participant.
Well,
Are you balanced?
you'll have to ask Julie.
Okay.
Good luck with that.
Unfortunately, she may have been right. As it turns out, what was promised did not happen.
That's challenging.
Yes,
It's very frustrating.
things that were supposed to have been taken care of in the year and a half lapse, whatever we had there, did not happen.
Well, I know when we were here for audit time, you guys still weren't balanced.
It is a challenge. It is, yeah. Claims is going well. Drainage is seeming to go well.
And the stamped warrant issuances, are those flowing?
Seems to be going fine.
Because I know that's a big challenge when you have an issue with them, because they don't understand what a stamped warrant is when you call for support.
Yeah, I think Chris is doing fine with that. Payroll
Well, and as long
is-
as she keeps that spreadsheet too, because
Yeah.
she's got that
Yep, she's got her
that-
spreadsheet. Payroll is a struggle, and the treasurer's side is a struggle. So, that's what you don't want to hear. I mean, you don't want to hear that your payroll is a struggle. That's hard. Chelsea spends hours on the phone when it's payroll weeks, so that's not good.
Payroll and the cash balancing are the two most.
Yes.
Also, the two you think that they would have worked out.
Well, we've got another county that was one of their pilot counties, and they're still not, they don't balance every day. So it's very frustrating. And I know with Julie, it's gotta be very frustrating to her to walk out the door every night, not know, and know you're not balanced. So I guess keep on them, and hopefully by June 30th, they'll have a little more of it worked out, hopefully.
Julie does have some time blocked off with Laurel, one of the people who set us up, and Laurel seems to be very good. So Julie has 8 hours set aside with her to do some work, so hopefully. Yeah.
Nice weather we had.
It was, yesterday
Yeah,
anyway.
yesterday.
Was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yesterday my kids, well, Alexa had her first trap meet and it was way too nice. I mean, normally it's supposed to be raining and cold and windy and,
Well, I was shocked that the Forest City Middle School track meet was canceled because of cold.
yeah,
What?
yeah.
Is your,
I don't,
all we need for our college?
He shoots at Wartburg.
Does he? My
They
son
can
shoots
have one
at
back, yeah. And Wartburg just won the national championship, so.
But it's,
Give her one that
the
is
number of
yeah.
years, the last time I watched him, he had 25 out of 25.
Yeah, he ran, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did they go to Williams? They just went to San Antonio.
Yep, we were just there.
Were you over there too?
Yep, they were there, and that's where they won. So they won the classical. So it was trap, skeet, and sporting and super sporting are the 4 that they look at because those are the 4 they compete in. And yeah, they brought home a trophy. So it was pretty exciting. I'm glad we went to watch. So it's been good. It's been fun.
Yeah, that's
They didn't have they only got 4.
Oh, really? So they don't have enough to compete as a team.
Yeah, they just only individual stuff.
Yeah, that's good. Still a good experience.
Yeah, it was fun.
Did you go down and watch?
No, I did not.
And the weather was probably better than here.
You know what? I was in a sweatshirt the whole time.
It was chilly.
It was
I've heard that.
windy.
I heard somebody came back from Arizona and said it was only in the 50s.
Yeah.
I believe that.
I was all excited because I'm like, oh, we're gonna get out of this. I mean,
William still got sunburns in the back. He smacked them.
oh yeah, all of the Wartburg boys did too. So, yeah, not all the moms went down. So yeah, it was.
Noise settled down.
So
They're still down there.
So we got that to look forward to.
Those people.
That was their
Oh, yeah.
oh yeah, they were talking rather loudly when I came in this morning.
They're talking loudly in here too.
So you guys have had a fun morning.
All in a day's work.
Yeah, that's all
One's a
right.
lawyer.
I
Had a
saw
lawyer on the phone. And, yeah,
Very exciting.
we were surrounded.
Okay.
And it's a situation where I feel they're, paying, but there's no recourse to take care of it.
We're not gonna pay the drainage bill out of the county.
We'd get in big trouble. We did
Oh,
that.
yeah, if that
Oh,
would
yeah.
come through, then, yeah, no, you
Might
would
as
be
well
all
just
in.
said, well,
Then we'd be in
Elizabeth
trouble with you.
would less.
No,
Elizabeth would
you
find
can
it.
blame it on me.
Elizabeth would find it.
I'm much more scared of you than I am of Joe.
Me too. I get blamed for everything, so yeah, I'm happy to take blame for that. Yeah, there's no public purpose in that, so. Yeah, it's all good. All right,
Thank you so
well,
much.
yeah, if you need anything.
I know where to find you.
Yeah, the other thing is, it'll probably be a single audit next year with all of the ARPA money and all the federal funds that are getting spent, so.
Mhm.
Making sure departments are tracking all of those expenditures and have all of their ducks in a row.
We're hoping we're spending it.
Yep. That's what it's for. Spend. So, but that'll be, additional procedures and whatever, so additional filings and,
The audit next year probably won't reflect as much. The year after will go a lot.
all right.
One once again, it's been entertaining.
Thank you.
Thanks. I try to just let you know what you want to know, not bore you too bad.
I'm always amazed how you can rattle through this stuff.
I could talk about this.
And we're not her only one, you know.
Yeah.
As much as I'd like to do that,
You don't need to know, hit the highlights.
Yeah. What you need to do is learn that Vulcan mind meld thing, so where you can just kind of,
Just
yeah,
get it to you without having to go through it. It's all good.
give us a
Better understanding, that's
Yes.
what he's asking for.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
That would be nice.
Okay. All right, well,
All
let
right.
me know if you need anything and
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm sure we'll be in touch.
all right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we're moving to
Leave it open, yeah.
12.
Yeah, it's hot here.
Ooh.
I was almost tempted to open
I'm
the
dying.
windows.
So ARPA discussions, just including the RFP for architect.
so I had this put on the agenda because I think we have to start working towards an architect for the public health building. Whether we're gonna do something there or do something somewhere else, we need to find out. I know architects are in short supply right now. So we probably
Need to get started on it. Need to get started on it.
We need to get an architect involved soon because I know a lot of the CDBG grants are being held back because of lack of architects.
Mm.
So we could probably secure something. I think this one's a little more simpler than some of those projects.
Yeah, I would say so too.
But we probably need to discuss what our, somewhat of our scope of work. I asked Julie to put together what kind of needs assessment of what they're gonna need to expand to.
Accommodate everything in that one location.
Well, we gotta figure out if it's possible.
Yeah, no, yeah, we may not have.
Some of it is if we have storage in the basement underneath, does it have to be publicly accessible, or can it just have stairs? I don't know, it's up to an architect to tell us
It's
that.
publicly accessible now.
We don't have a basement.
We don't have a basement in that building down here.
Yeah.
Our
it's
storage
accept-
is up there.
Yeah, your storage is up there, but is
Right.
that all on the main floor?
Yes.
So there's no stairs involved there. All right.
So. Forgot to bring that document that you sent me.
Oh, yeah.
I have,
And I don't know if let me see if I can pull it up. And Kevin is looking, he does have a map of our current building with measurements of each of the rooms and all that. He says it's in a file, he does have. So, I don't have that, I know Kevin Peterson had taken it at one time. I had given it to him, he says it's in here. So he's gonna look for that and then we're gonna scan it and I'll send it to you guys.
Okay.
Do you find that, Terry?
No. Did you send me something?
Yeah, I did. I'm trying to find it.
Did you tell me what day? That's Friday or something.
Is
I
it,
talked to you on Friday.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
it's your wish list, or what is it?
No, I have the wish list here.
Okay.
Allison and I sat down and I think one of the biggest things is, and it's just because I watched last week, someone come into our building, and he was in a wheelchair and he struggled to get the door open. We do not have handicap accessible doors. And those doors are heavy. We need a button door. If someone was not with him, he would not have been able to get into the door. The doors are wide enough, we need the push buttons.
You have to have a post out there away from the door to push the button out there.
Yeah. And that's just, I observed that last week. Obviously, our bigger lobby, because with that person, there was the wheelchair and 4 other people, and it was crowded in that lobby. The treatment room is definitely, small for that. We talked about a
How many
shop.
treatment rooms do you need?
Well, we talked about a shot room and then actually a treatment room, you know,
So 2 different ones.
right. Because if we have foot clinics in the treatment room and someone comes in for a shot, they either have to go to my office or the conference room or another nurse's office to get a shot. If we're talking COVID or anything that comes up in the future, we would like a separate entrance for those sick people so they're not with the healthy people.
Like if we had to do testing,
If we had to do testing for anything,
we would need to come into a separate, not the main.
so that could be part of like the, if we're thinking drive-through or just even keeping a separate entrance for that. I mean, so like if we would get a newer building, we could maybe move the veterans apart into that newer building too and maybe utilize that because that's next to the treatment room, you know, just things we're thinking off the top of our head. Obviously storage, so we can get the other building that we have up here, get them all back down to our building so we're all under one roof. Air filter system. A bigger conference room. And then probably remodel those rooms so each of the nurses had their own rooms. Allison and I,
We already do.
yep, the sanitarian would be there, so we figured 12 separate rooms.
So does the
To make it
sanitarian need to be in close proximity to you?
I don't think
I mean,
so.
I
could
don't
he
think so.
use?
But we're paying, you know, he's up
Well,
there.
no,
He's
I
up there.
know, we'd like to get rid of that, but
Right.
if we don't have to have his space in yours, that frees up some space and we have room in the courthouse.
No, we don't.
There's no room downstairs in that, it looks like there's an awful lot of empty cubicles in that area down there.
You've got periodic usage of the one
suppose.
part.
There's 3 empty cubicles down there at least. 1, 2,
Every time I go down there, there's
But
only
you
one or.
have to have separation with the type of work they do.
Right,
That
'cause
person can't be here, you can't have a cubicle.
Yeah,
next
that's
to them.
the thing.
That's the HIPAA
Yeah, yeah.
violation type.
We
Yeah.
would, I was gonna say, we'd almost have to partition it off with real walls instead of.
You
That would
could
be like-
maybe run a real wall down the middle of that and put something on the one
Soundproof
side
it.
and something on the other side,
East to west.
but I don't know.
I think we need to probably try to plan it with this and see if it's possible. If there's something we have to cut because of space, that might be a possibility.
And then the conference room as well, do you conference with your group of people all the time, right?
Mhm.
It's not just for your boards and stuff.
No,
No,
it's meetings, trainings.
it's meetings, trainings, yep.
And then right now we have a nurse in there, that's her office /
So you could
conference
almost
room.
just call it a training room or whatever
Yep.
too.
Down there, if actually we were to put Ruth in that other room, then she would be
Separate.
separate and the whole thing down there would be available. Because if that little conference room that's down there where that computer room is right off of it, if Ruth, that's bigger than what her cubicle is now. If she was in there and with the door shut, that would make it HIPAA because nobody would be able to hear.
Well, what about the
DHS comes in
DHS
there.
comes in?
DHS is always down in the other corner there. So
It just seems like there's, I'm
that's
looking
only
on
like
that.
once a week.
I feel like that could be much better use of space, but something to look at.
I thought if we opened up that whole space, we could have a bigger meeting room.
Exactly.
It's not as handy to the offices here, but more space.
And then we also said with the air filter system, I know there's absolutely no crank out windows in that building. And we do need at least a couple, cause sometimes that does get real stuffy in there. There are no.
Fresh air is nice.
Mhm.
So ventilation, air
Yeah.
exchange.
Yeah.
Well, I think if we did an addition, I would think it would include moving air.
And I think an architect, obviously, they would know, like, I don't know if there's HIPAA rules with
crank out windows that open where we store our medical records, is that a security thing?
Yeah, I don't,
know.
Well, which,
I mean, they're already under lock and key,
I was gonna
but
say, there isn't haven't been a lot of break-ins lately, have there? I would guess that
that was my other thing.
as long as there's a screen there, then it's still breaking in.
I did put down, and this is kind of toward the bottom, maybe a more secure entrance. And I'm saying, like, we do have a lot of mental health issues sometimes, and right now Vicky is open. Maybe a glass that she has to talk through or
Or be
something.
buzzed in or
something, just because mental health right now is at very high. And we have had, since I've been here, we have had to lock down our building.
And we do have
the panic button, but I'm just thinking, cause she's right now, she's
Right there.
right there. And I think she might have feel better if that was just a little more petitioned off, like how the sheriff's department is with that and be able to talk that way. I don't know, that's just,
So you would have that, you said about being buzzed in,
or something like that, I don't, even maybe just
they'd be outside before they're buzzed in then, or would there be an
No,
entryway you'd go into?
And I think an entryway is
An
more what I
entry.
was thinking.
Yeah, we were
Like, they'd be
thinking
able
more
to
that-
come in,
Sheriff's office.
yeah,
yeah, for that first entrance,
So
and then
there
if they had to
could
come
be a
back.
waiting area there, and then
yep.
So what about bathrooms?
We have two currently, one for the staff and then one for the public.
Do you need male and female bathrooms, or?
I think they've gone away from that
I think they've
for
gone,
many
Okay,
reasons.
so you just have one that's,
Probably wouldn't
public
hurt
and
if
one
you add
private.
on to add more restroom.
Maybe one more. I
Yeah.
mean, that's not a necessity, but
As long as you have one for the public. it's
yep, we have one for the
one for
public.
yourselves, it's.
And the architect would know more about
Yeah.
requirements there.
well, the one you have is not handicapped, really
This-
accessible.
the one up front,
The one up front is.
Oh,
it's got the grab bars and it's plenty big for a wheelchair.
oh, it is.
I was gonna say that the public one would have to almost be that
Yeah.
way.
I just-
assume that would have been redone years ago.
Actually, I was in there and I just didn't know if it seemed like it was. Because I've just been reading up on the requirements for a project that I'm working on in Clear Lake, and I don't know that it really is.
It might not be.
Well,
I don't know that we've
it
ever
was
had a
built-
wheelchair in there, but
things change over
Right.
time.
I do know there's the bars.
So it
We do
may-
have the grab bars in that
it
front.
probably met the needs then.
It might have
Right.
right then.
That stuff keeps grandfathering in, does it? As
Right,
long as
but
made
if
the
you
attempt
build
to-
another, I don't know if they require you to update if you're adding on.
Probably.
Yeah,
Is there anything else on your list? Is that it?
That's all we could think of at the top of our head.
So right now you have how many offices? And how many, you said you need 12 altogether?
Right, and we have 1, 2, 3, you, me, 2 nurses, and Vicky. There's 5. Because Vicky's in the front. So,
and then there's
And then there's
one,
VA.
2 offices uptown.
yep.
That's 7 and plus VA.
Mhm. Then we'd like our room where the aides could go in and chart, because right now they're charting up front with Vicky, and they have the privacy screens on their thing, and that's kind of, doesn't have to be huge, just enough to have a couple computers in there for the HIPAA compliance and all that. So we can go in and chart. And Rhonda is in the conference room right now.
Okay, so the number of offices you currently are occupying, we've got
That are currently in that office.
within that building.
Or VA, you, nurse,
Four.
nurse, me, Vicky.
Six, yeah.
6. And then Rhonda's is the conference room.
Yep.
So what you really need is 12, is that? Okay. you'd have to add 6.
And some of those don't have to be as, you're gonna only put one in the office, they don't have to be, you know, extremely big, you know what?
But you
Yeah.
have to make it a handicap accessible.
You have to have the door wide enough. I think my door to my office is just wide,
Well,
it just
and
can.
if this is new and there are federal requirements, it may be, it's just like a bathroom where you have to be able to go in there with a wheelchair and turn around in a certain 5x5 area.
Right.
Which you can't do that in your office.
It'd be tight.
It'd be tight in my office, yeah.
Yeah, there's no way your office would allow that. So.
I don't even think they could do it in the nurse, you can't definitely in Allison's office. Because, and we can't do it in the treatment room.
So an RFP for architect, what's the process here?
So what I've found from other counties is they work with like their COGs, so like NIACOG or whatever, and they help them get an RFP together
Okay.
for a architect or whatever. And I had Shelley from Bremer County just did one recently. This is just an example of what they did. And she was gonna send me a couple more documents, but I don't see that she sent them to me yet.
Oh, it's this. Kind of put a point system on it.
So I can contact NIACOG today and see if they can work with us on that. And could you email me your list? And what you emailed Terry, and so that I can.
I couldn't find it in my outbox, so I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't
Well, once you
find
get
it.
back to your office, you'll
Yeah.
probably find it. But if you can email that stuff to me, and then I can get it to NIACOG, and I can work with them to get us an RFP for the architect. And
Okay. And then I'll get, do you want that map too that Kevin has? If he can find it.
Yes, yes.
He knows he has it, he just has gotta
What's
dig
that
for
one
it.
that's on the wall?
That just,
Blueprint.
that
That's
just,
just the, that's not
Fire.
measurements.
that's just the fire, so it doesn't have the measurements, and I know I gave one to Kevin, and this was years
I was
ago.
thinking when we did all this camera stuff.
And I think that's where Eric had gotten it, and that's when I gave it to Kevin, but that was past our depreciation of the building that I didn't need for our cost report, because you don't have to keep that stuff for 7 years, and I had it stuck in with my cost report, and I think it is gone, because I went up to the other building and I dug all afternoon on Friday and I could not find it. I know what folder it's in, I can see the folder, but I can't find the folder up there, so I'm thinking it's been shredded.
One thing I don't really see right away in that document is, the request for, in your proposal, what your percentage would be.
Yeah.
Is it a fee
And
or a
I think
percentage or?
maybe she's got other documents that go with this, but
Some of those can go quite extreme.
yeah. So I'll ask.
I think the one we did at the jail was what, 7% or a little more, 7.75%. The project.
Is what the architect costs.
But I think these days there are projects that's running
Higher.
10 to 20%.
So,
And does ARPA pay for the architect, or is that our out of pocket?
I would think ARPA would pay for that too.
Since they require it?
I would think so. Although, I was talking to Robert yesterday, and he thinks that there's no requirement for an architect.
Oh, yeah. But there is, we got chastised for not having an architect for that building out there. We got chastised for no architect on your building. And I think state code requires that if you spend over 100,000, you have to have an architect.
I think it's wise to have an architect, especially if we're gonna be putting in a basement or
Well,
a,
and you're gonna, the bidding process, the architect's gonna be invaluable.
yeah.
You gotta have the specs and design and, see, I can draw you a design where the room layout is, but I don't know what's required for the, some of the handicap accessibility and
Right,
stuff.
right.
They're gonna be,
Well, and that stuff can all be found.
but I think we have
I
to have
assume
an
that there
architect
isn't.
over 100,000. Cause I
So
gotta
if it's
From
hear
what I understood, architects were required usually on most projects.
anything over 100,000. That was the thing out there. We didn't spend 100,000 on that building out there, so we didn't get one.
Which building you're talking about?
The
Behind
building
the
out
sheriff's
back of the
building.
jail. Just a shed,
Oh,
storage.
Storage shed back there.
oh,
And we got an earful from the Architects Association.
But that's not a publicly accessible building, is it?
No, but
No.
it's more that they should have been involved, is what they're saying.
Well, I don't
And
think
we
they should have.
challenged him on it, that it was designed by the local lumberyard design program, and it was under 100,000, so
Yeah, I just said, I would stand
otherwise it
for
would have cost us another 10 to 20,000.
Oh, Julie,
Hi, sorry to interrupt, but can I have one of you come to the treasurer's office? I have a customer down
you
there for
mean,
drainage issues,
oh,
so Kelsey is busy at the time.
sure.
So
You want me
whoever
to
wants
go,
to,
or-
Yeah, it's
Come on.
probably yours.
and I don't know, should I have Chris come too, or do you,
Oh.
or do you wanna come as well?
Probably Chris wouldn't hurt to have Chris there.
Probably Chris.
evidently, they must be being a little bit bad.
Oh, he's not happy.
We have no legal recourse.
Well, he doesn't need to take it out on the treasurer.
No. Maybe one of us should.
Maybe we should have the sheriff do it.
Maybe.
I think maybe you should go too. We can hold on the meeting a second.
Should we notify the sheriff just in case?
I can do that.
Somebody's upstairs or something.
I'll go peek and see if Kevin is in to see if he found that.
And the VA needs to remain with us, that's the plan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
okay.
just trying to figure out where.
How did, yep,
We want to make sure they can be able to drive right up to the door.
Right.
and Go in.
I think just maybe utilizing whatever, I mean,
I can see your plan for maybe taking over the VA with your separate treatment area.
Right.
And drive up
and
the
just
shops.
move her somewhere.
And then
Right.
maybe move her into the very beginning of the addition where you can drive
Yeah.
right up there into that L shape maybe and
mhm,
as a separate entrance.
If it
to
doesn't
that.
work,
yeah. If that doesn't work, we could,
we'll figure something else out.
yeah, figure something else out. Because that's perfect, because, you know, that door that's right around the corner from my office, that's shut, and we can keep that shut, they can come in there and have our testing and I'll go see if Kevin's here and see if he has it.
If we get in a situation like last year where, I mean, if we could offer COVID testing, that would be a great community thing.
It'd be nice if we could just buy another building and convert it. That's been so tough, and I don't know if it's gonna be accepted by the community to buy that.
Over here,
Everybody wants to see something come back in. The gal doesn't know what she's doing. And I haven't had a chance to talk to her.
mm-hmm.
I don't think our FCED is helping us in that. They're supposed to contact her, but they sure tag.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's probably not something they want to see. It's,
Right.
you know, we could sell ours for a business of some sort, but it'd be nice to not have that mess while we're occupying it.
Right. Yeah.
The only other one would be the vacant red house door.
And that's probably, oh, that's the one over there?
About the old bonfires.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's big.
That is big.
If we could find other uses for it. What was that, 5,000? What was it? Yeah. Maybe it's not as big as I thought when we get. Great, beacon's all locked up.
I can never get that to work right. It always freezes.
Well, I always have to close all my windows out of it
Yeah.
and start over. Then it will come up. Yeah, now it's coming up. Hi, Mark. Oh, not great. We're still in the meeting, but we're kind of on a break right now. We had an incident down by the treasurer's office they're looking into, so. Something quick, or? Yes. Yep.
Oh, he found it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, if you guys come up with a plan, then we could probably look at that plan. Oh, we were given that. You want? Yeah, that was in the packet. Yep. Yeah. We kind of figure if you guys figure something out, then we have to figure something out. Yeah. Yep. Okay. You bet.
Kevin found it.
Okay.
So as soon as he emails it to me, I'm just gonna email it to you. And then I'll print it off and send it to Carla too, so we have it. Like our rooms are, Allison's room is, oh God, now of course I just looked at it, 10 by 6. Our nurse's room are 10 by 5, 10 by 5. Mine's 10 by 4.
So, yeah, they're small to start with. Even the 10 by 6, without furniture, you're fine, but if you put furniture in there, then you're losing room. The engineer's ever gonna need his phone? He left it on their table
Oh.
2 hours ago. So was it pretty bad? He used to be a federal employee. He's strong. It's a long story. It all comes down to their parents made this agreement that was never recorded and it affected what we were doing. He wants the county to do it. He can't do that. All the others were pretty decent, just him that was, had a law. Was a lawyer with him, so
Tressler was upstairs, so we just went and got him.
Kevin has that map on his computer, so when
Oh,
he gets,
perfect.
yep. So I will, as soon as he emails me that or whatever, then I will, send it to you too, along with my wish list. So when you do the RFP to the architects, who do you like send it out? Do they have a list?
Well, if
I
there's an
mean,
association, we'd send it through too, but you could send it to ones we've worked with and.
I would like to keep it local. I was talking to Robert yesterday, and he goes, you know, when you send it out far, he goes,
You don't know what you're gonna get.
you don't know what you're gonna get, and you end up just paying mileage, you know?
I mean, do we have to give it through the association, or can we just send it to the ones we know?
Well, I think that's a question for NICOG too. I think we can talk to.
so you guys have, I mean, I've never,
We had one that worked on our courthouse. Well, we had an original one, and then we had the one that did the roof project.
And I'd like to send it to him, and I'd like to send it to the one at Clear Lake, the one that's,
That was, is Gary Anderson retired now?
no, no,
He's not?
I don't think so. Yeah,
That was the one on the roof project.
yeah.
And
So
he-
do they
he
have
came
one for
before
the-
city.
Do they have one for the conservation
yeah.
building?
That's,
But he's really far away,
No.
Oh,
like Marion or something.
yeah, I don't know, we might go that route.
Yeah, they specialize in conservation buildings, so I don't know.
Well, yeah, that was my other thing. Are there certain ones that
Posted
specialize,
meeting type buildings.
Right.
that specialize in certain things? I mean, I've got no
This is
idea.
gonna be a simple project. that you
Yeah.
just
Well, yeah.
Follow the guidelines.
Right.
So have you stood outside the door again on the road there, Terry? I'm not telling you how many nurses have said, why is Terry DeVries standing in the middle of the road?
I was in a human way shooting elevation. Because when I look level, okay, that's where I'm looking at. That would be
It's
5.5 foot
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a weird.
of fall.
It's
I can look
weird.
it up on Beacon or on the pictometry and it'll tell me the slope.
So is there a way to build that up, just to make it,
Well, that part doesn't bother me. You can build it up out of the ground, no problem. What I'm looking at is where I was standing in the bottom corner, can we walk into the basement? That would be beneficial, where you could just park right there to unload storage stuff.
And,
Oh, yeah.
and people could come pick up.
That's why I was
Stuff.
talking, that's why I was talking about the handicap accessibility. You have to have that for the storage area.
And that's what I was,
And to me, I wouldn't think that would have to be publicly handicap accessible, our storage area, because the only people that need to
Well,
go here.
that's what I would hope.
is us, unless they come and pick up something.
So even if it was like 3 steps down into it, it's still pretty simple access to you guys.
Right.
Mhm.
If he could have slammed that door, he would.
Be nice to have a drinking fountain.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have a cooler, but it still would be nice to have one of those.
Drinking.
A drinking fountain.
With that filled water.
That's been my,
bottle.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
water filler.
We
That's,
did,
that's down low on the
that's
wish list.
the, and we did kind of like our wish, like outside seating. And a picnic table, a lunch area.
I'm just wondering if ARPA covers equipment though.
Are we still in session?
For instance, so does
I know.
ARPA cover equipment?
I don't know, I can't
Maybe
remember.
the water fountain, since it's clean water.
Well, probably, wasn't one of the things water?
Susan?
So, any other discussions that you had?
Well, we were just
on
talking
Changer?
about the, you know, those meetings and, you know, I don't know if equipment is covered, you know, furniture, can we do that under ARPA at all, or, you know?
Furniture? Ooh,
Well, like, you gotta have the office equipment to fill it with, they're talking about a drinking fountain for clean water to drink, well, clean water's isn't a,
the drinking fountains with the, that's,
Touchless.
that would be something that would fall under ARPA.
okay.
Because we talked about those for the courthouse too.
So
Like
you're
in our
gonna-
treatment room, we would need like an exam table that would go up and down so people could get on
And you
it.
need wash sink there.
Yep,
Mhm.
yep.
Right now, our freezer is sitting on top of 2 filing cabinets. I mean, because of where it needs to be. I mean, so there's things that need to be,
So the bad thing about moving things around in your existing facility and requiring plumbing is it's slab on grade and you'd have to bust up concrete and then heating the floor.
Floor heat,
Yeah, that's not gonna
But-
be good.
right?
But
Yeah,
not-
we have floor heat.
but I don't think not in, you'd have to ask Kevin on all that. I don't know.
Not in the server room,
There's no, not in the server room and not,
my office.
your office, there's no floor heat.
But, okay, so where's this, oh, I suppose the sink in the treatment room.
And there's a sink
is
in the-
on which wall?
The wall where the bathroom is,
Okay, so it's
Back to back with
Back to
the
back.
bathroom.
with the bathroom. And then there's a sink in the other bathroom, and then there's a sink in the break room.
Where's the other bathroom?
In the hallway.
In the hallway.
Back hallway.
Down the ways from my office.
Okay.
And that is,
Well, that would butt up with the
So we
room
The
that
janitor's
Kevin
room.
Bills
So we
is.
could possibly do something there without, we could go back to back there
Yeah.
with a drain.
'Cause there is a drain-
Otherwise, the basement would be a good place to do your plumbing and
the mechanics room, where our sink is in the other bathroom, is butt up against where they have their drain and stuff, where we clean equipment and everything. That's all in there.
where's that?
Kitty Wampus from my office.
So it's right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't be too far away then.
Yeah, that's right in the middle.
If you're there. How big a treatment room do you need? 10 by 10? 10 by 8?
Bad with numbers.
Me too.
Because you've got a bed that'll take up probably, sometimes it's at an angle or,
Yeah,
so you're probably gonna need.
which has to be accessible if we had to bring somebody in a wheelchair.
I'd say you can almost need 10 by 10. This is 12. And then I got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. This would be 10 foot by 12 foot. So from her computer to there is 10. I would think that'd
That'd be plenty big.
Maybe
If
8
you had
by-
an exam.
Maybe 8 by 10
You know.
would do it.
So yeah, as soon as Kevin emails me that, I will send it on your way. He found it on his laptop, or on his computer, so.
So you can ask NIACOG if we can, if we're required to send it out completely, or if we just send to the ones we've had relationships with.
Okay.
Architects, you're saying?
Good relationship with maybe a couple of them. We can get a couple proposals.
I used an architect out of the cities and he was able to take basically my ideas and thoughts and since it was already kind of pre-started,
All the work we do ahead of time will help his job.
yeah, that his fees were quite a bit less than just starting from scratch, you know? So, he specializes in residential, but I think he does all, you know, so. If we could at least have some of that pre-stuff done, it would be less hours that they would have involved. All right, any other discussions about ARPA? Can we stand adjourned, please?
1 second.
Okay.
Do we want to, I'm sorry, swallowed my own spit. Do we want to have, I have to fill out a report by April 30th for our first, like, reporting what we're gonna do. I feel like,
We've committed and budgeted a couple of them.
yeah, so,
I think it'd be good to report
Do we want to do a resolution to commit
I
certain
think so.
amount of funds to?
Because Robert's asking about his, and they're gonna probably go for bid in a month, the way it sounds.
So can I put on the agenda next week to do a resolution to commit certain amount of funds for ARPA, like the,
Because the ones in budget were this one and the nature center and the
scanning? Yep,
Those are the only ones we've committed to in the budget.
okay. So let's,
Unless the recent news of the health care jump in expense changes anything? Does any of that change?
Well, we can't intermingle this with it, so
No, I know. Oof.
gotta have some good news.
yeah.
After today, yes, we do. All right,
I think, now I'm done.
we stand adjourned.